and welcome to this next live episode of Noles Quality Control. I'm your host, Ben Meyerson. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, a good friend, and the founder of Noles Gameday, Logan Robinson. Logan, how you doing, my man? I know slow part of the year, but we're going to be talking about some exciting stuff today.
It is the slow part of the year, but I have to say, Ben, I've missed you. We became some good friends over the spring, and I got to hang out through the rain, the little bit of the chilliness at the start, but then the hot heat for a little while, sweating our tails off. But good to bounce back with you on here, and looking forward to doing quite a bit of these, hopefully throughout the rest of the offseason, to bring some content to some fans.
Of course, man, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve the fans, and I know this has been a long time coming. Because like you said, we really just got to shoot the shit over spring practice. We had a good time covering the Seminoles. Those rain days were interesting. I remember the one day we got stuck inside the Moore Center, man. That was quite the day. And then I also remember, like you said, sweating our tails off, man. Like I almost overheated a few days. So I'm glad those spring practices were at 4 p.m. and not high noon. Because I think otherwise we wouldn't be here right now.
No. And that was fun. It was a good spring. It created a lot of question marks, a little bit, but a lot of positives that we'll be able to talk about throughout the rest of this offseason, because there were some surprises right off the bat first week, and I'm definitely excited to kind of start diving into preparing for this season, which is a make or break one for Mike Norvell and staff.
It's a make or break season, and as you can see from the title of this show, it's likely Jordan Travis's last year as a Seminole. So I think looking at that quarterback position, that's where we want to start today, because that's where all the drama is. Of course, the Seminoles have Jordan Travis, but looking to the future, the Seminoles already have a 2023 QB commit with Chris Parson. We're going to talk about him in a little bit, but I want to address this overall first, that in the past, I believe, week and a half, the Seminoles have offered two new 2023 quarterbacks. Both of them are top 500 players. They're also both Elite 11 finalists along with Chris Parson. It's going to be Brock Glenn and Ricky Collins. Ricky Collins is already committed to Purdue, but that also seems like a fluid situation where it could be a change at some point. And I know that the staff has connections with both of these players, and they do seem like they're very seriously interested. But I do want to go back to Chris Parsons first, because it's been interesting what's been happening with him since all that news has come out. You see him put out offers from SMU, offers from Mississippi State, which he has connections with. I believe that's his kind of hometown school, sort of, or his dad has a connection through there. So what's your feel on this situation, Logan? Because I know Parsons, you got to see him or in person a little bit. I know Dustin has as well, Dustin Lewis over at Nole Gameday. You guys have really talked him up a lot. Not just, the highlights are great from him. They are electric. But more than anything, I think the thing I heard you and Dustin and others really speak to was this kid's arm strength and just how much of a playmaker he is. So can you talk a little bit about Parsons, what you've seen from him, what information you might have about where you think he might be at right now, and just kind of how this whole thing is going right now?
Yeah, I think when you look at FSU Twitter, they like to heat up everything, and that seems to be the case. And kind of when it comes to recruiting too, in an off season like this, where we're in the deep dead period, we got to find something to chat about, and that's understandable. We're all kind of bored. We're having to watch some basketball. No hits on basketball people or hockey people. I think it's phenomenal, but for football people, it's pretty boring right now. So the big thing to dive into is recruiting, and whenever you're offering two quarterbacks in the same class on the same day, you're just asking for some kind of drama to be filled. And we kind of saw it before too. Something came up, and Parson saw that on social media, and it kind of started a little rumor trend on if he was going to be sticking with Florida State and such, and if it was going into his head, and that kind of got cleared up pretty quickly. And the staff has been very communicative from what we've been told with Parson about these two offers that were handed out to really two talented quarterbacks. One that originally, got an invite, Elite 11 Finals invite before Chris Parson did. Congratulations to Chris Parson for retrieving that a couple days ago. Brock Glenn, who's, the guy that got it. And then you look at Ricky Collins, who's a Big Ten quarterback commit at Purdue. These are talented guys. And, I think Florida State is doing the right thing here, being extra communicative with Parson. I don't think, before these offers were given, I don't think Parson was too mixed on coming in and competing. I don't think that's something that is really a problem for him. It's just about the communication from staff, and from what we've been told, everything has been fluid on that part. I think, with just social media kind of stirs some things up, and that kind of sucks for, a young kid. And that's now the way of the game, and recruiting. Everything's out on Twitter. You get to see everybody's opinions, and, you just got to hope you have tunnel vision to block it all out. But these are two talented quarterbacks, but this is what Florida State needs to do. Ben, you and I saw it at the spring, all throughout camp. And I'm sorry. After Jordan Travis, you just don't feel so good. You don't feel so good to have someone thrown out there and play a college game right now. Tate Rodemaker has had the most experience out of them, and that's just not enough. And then AJ Duffy, Florida State has to bring in more than one quarterback in this class. And if it happens to be two quarterbacks and it be Chris Parson, a Glenn, or a Collins, vice versa, that's a great thing that Florida State staff needs to do. Coach Tokars and Norvell, from what we were told, have been very communicative with Parson. So it's just something that needs to happen. I just did not like seeing what we saw at the spring behind Jordan Travis, because it sucks, health reasons too, with JT. That's you're already kind of put in a tough spot heading into this 2022 season because you didn't grab anybody in the transfer market.
Yeah, and I think there really is just that huge sense of urgency from the staff. More than your words, your actions speak louder, right? So seeing what they've done in this past week, it's obvious not just that they are looking ahead, but they're aggressively looking ahead and anticipating transfers in the future, movement in and out of the room. And that's just the reality of college football in 2022. If you're not going to give opportunities to players, they're going to go find a place to play. And for the Seminoles to be bringing in multiple quarterbacks, I do feel like they are playing with fire a little bit, Logan. It's a very delicate situation because it's pretty clear that the staff it's not that it's Parson or Colin or Glenn. It's some combination of two of those guys, right? So right now, obviously, Parson is that commit for Florida State. He has been on campus a lot. He did work with Nole Gameday. He did interviews with you guys. He has the Bobby Bowden jacket. Clearly, he wants to be in Tallahassee. It's just a matter of what else is going to happen between now and when he's due to sign and come on campus and be a Seminole. So it's going to be interesting how that all plays out.
Yeah, and just going back, I know you were originally talking, asked about Parson and what about him that we like. And obviously it's that arm talent. He can move around in the pocket. He can sling the ball. We've seen him not only in maybe viral videos on Instagram and Twitter, but going over just to his highlights and how talented he is. I know there's a lot of question marks of going from school to school to school. I think that's something that will be in the past, and we'll get to watch him in his senior season. And he's a competitor. He likes working. He likes training. He's a kid that gets up at 4:30 in the morning, will go work out before anybody else. And then he'll go through school, and then he'll have practices, and he'll go train later on at night. And he's not done till like 9 p.m. and he goes to bed and does it all over again. So this is a kid that likes to work. He wants to train. He wants to get better. I thought during the Elite 11 regionals, he looked really good. I know Zach Blostein was also there along with Dustin. Our guy Dustin was also there to cover him. And I thought just structured wise, you could see a difference in what he looks like. His technique just looks good, and his feet work has gotten so much better. Why is that? He's up there training in Atlanta, training in Dallas with some really, really well-respected trainers, along with some Justin Fields, Chicago Bears quarterback, which if you're trying to maybe, I don't know, put your game around a player, and try to mold it around it or learn ways and to get better. And that kind of mold between Parson and Justin Fields, that's about as best as you can get, in my opinion. So he's a guy that likes to work. I don't think he's worried too much about competition. I think maybe this is time just to dial in and get prepared for the season ahead. But you definitely, I see some Florida State fans saying, well, it's okay. Parsons we offered 2 more quarterbacks. Well, what happens if you lose Parson? And you go back to the last couple of years when you don't grab none of the damn quarterbacks. What you going to do then? What is your future going to look like then? Your main focus right now is to keep Parson into the fold and do a good job recruiting him continuously and communicating with him, because this is your guy, I think, of the future. If you're able to bring in a Glenn, a Collins to compete with him, that is just that's an A1 quarterback class coming in for the 2023 recruiting room. So it's got to be solely focused on keeping Parson. You don't want to lose him. I know a lot of Florida State fans just think that they can go out and grab anybody, but let's go back to the past history, guys. That's not been the case for a little while.
And I think it's really important with this whole Parsons thing to stay as communicative as the staff is right now. And we'll see this upcoming Saturday and Sunday. There's going to be a camp in Tallahassee. I'm going to be really interested to see, one, if Parson is there, and if he is there, what's he like? What's the interaction like? What does the relationship look like between him and the staff? And I'm hoping that's something we'll get to see this weekend, although, with these camp things, you kind of never know. But we'll find out more. And it does seem like a developing situation, Logan, where I guess these next 2 months, really before the high school season starts ratcheting up, Parson has to start focusing on his fall season. You want to not only secure your future, but you want to make sure that it is very clear and obvious what you're doing to that quarterback commit who you've had for so long, right? This is a guy who committed to you very early on in the process. He clearly just wants to be a Seminole. I don't think there's anyone who doubts that. So, see if the staff handles this right. I think it's fair to have a little bit of worry, Logan, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a full-blown panic situation yet, but I think it's just one of those things we got to monitor week by week. We got to be looking at, what offers he's going to be getting, what he's going to be talking about publicly. And also we know this for a fact, Logan, this Florida State staff is just much higher on Parson than maybe other places are, or how he's even viewed nationally, right? So This is a guy they are all in on. The other interest is not because they're not all in. It's really just like you said, that competition and the fact that, hey, this is just the nature of college football now. Look, Jordan Travis, we'll talk about him soon, but this is his last year as a Seminole. I think that's pretty clear and obvious. So, look, college football, it's just crazy, the transfer market with the quarterback position. You're going to get an opportunity if you're a good enough player. And I think it's smart of the staff to go after a few guys, try and bring in multiple guys. It's just a matter of how they land this situation, because you have to be very, very delicate. You can't screw this up, like you said, Logan. If they lose Parson in the process of going after these 2 other guys, or even more quarterbacks in the class, and then they don't land any of the quarterbacks that they deem elite and worthy, the ones that they want to bring in, they're going to look really stupid.
Yeah, they are. So. Yeah, this is not gonna look so great going back to the past of the quarterback room and Mike Norvell. I think Mike Norvell does a good job in the recruiting room for what it is, but now these quarterbacks want to see wins, and you've got a quarterback already committed. You got to try your hardest to keep him, like you said, Ben. We're still expecting to see Chris Parson here in town here this weekend for a gigantic recruiting event going on. With the mega camp expected to throw to in front of Mike Norvell, also 2024 quarterback Luke Kromenhoek too. If you go back to Brock Glenn too, he's expecting, he's wanting to make a decision this month. Yeah. This month alone, and he does want to make a visit to Florida State before making a decision. And so things can get even more interesting this month. We kind of expected this. This is why we're here. We're starting to get closer. If you think about it, a couple months from now, we'll be back and getting ready for some fall camp action. Things are starting to heat up now, and this is where recruiting really starts bumping. And it's going to be bumping a lot for Florida State after a pretty slow month of May. But this is going to be a big quarterback kind of recruiting cycle for Florida State, and it's much needed. In my opinion, you've got to try to bring in two, because if you look at, like we talked about, that quarterback room, you just don't feel good. I don't feel good about it heading into the 2022 quarterback or into the season.
And I don't even feel that great about AJ Duffy, to be honest. I don't think it's fair to highly criticize him or judge him, solely off what we've seen in this spring. But I also think staff isn't comfortable with him starting over Tate Rodemaker right now. If Jordan Travis couldn't play at all this season, I don't really think even Mike Norvell or the staff quite know right now who they would want to be that starting guy. And I don't know, and I'm not trying to put down Tate Rodemaker, but he's just a backup quarterback. He's a great practice quarterback, and that's about it. So Florida State needs to find some other depth at the QB position. And I do want to take a look first at the Purdue commit Collins. Man, this is a really interesting prospect, like a highly, highly ranked kid. Bring up his film right here. And I think, we'll talk about Brock Glenn next. Brock Glenn, to me, is your more pocket passer. He's more your Phillip Rivers, Tyler Van Dyke type of quarterback, if that makes sense. I hate to compare him to a Miami quarterback, but I was texting Dustin the other day, when I watched this, but that's kind of what I see. But with Ricky Collins, like you said earlier, this is a Big Ten Purdue commit, and let's just take a look at some of his highlights. He's a playmaker, man. That throw right there, it was a very good throw. It was a little out of structure, but I think when you watch him operate in a clear structure in a good pocket with good depth, man, his ability to navigate the pocket, to have a great base, to have all the right mechanics, I thought he was the most impressive in that aspect.
Yeah, no, he definitely, there's things you can work on. I mean, like I said, this is a junior in high school, so not everything is going to look gorgeous. But if you're looking for playmaking abilities, this is where Ricky Collins has some game to him. He can move around. He's shifty, run a little RPO. Is able to find there and the end zone. And you're looking at two of the same style quarterbacks. If you're looking specifically at Parson and Collins, you would love for this to probably be your two. I mean, you're not going to say no to Glenn either whatsoever, but if you're looking at two quarterbacks that you'd like to have the same style of play in, this is where Parson and Collins might fit that mold a little bit better. Because if you go back, I mean, Florida State had a really rough time with having Jordan Travis, who likes to run around. He can throw, but he's a dual threat quarterback. And then you had Mackenzie Milton as your backup, and you're having to throw Mackenzie Milton out there in games because Jordan Travis wasn't healthy. But you're running the same offense that Jordan Travis runs, but you're using Mackenzie Milton, and that was just no bueno. We looked at the NC State game, and I don't think Florida State loses that if Jordan Travis is available to play. That's something that Florida State has got to do here, in my opinion. Get two quarterbacks in that are running the same kind of system, dual threat, and can move out of the pocket a little bit. You're hoping now that offensive line continues to grow and get better. Coach Atkins is doing a phenomenal job of bringing in talent now. He's got a class to work with. But, if you want the two style kind of quarterbacks, you probably go more Collins, but you will not say no to Brock Glenn.
No. And Collins also, man, he has a lot of interest right now from other schools. I know he's committed to Purdue, but I believe he's gotten offers from Oregon and Washington around the same time he got offers from Florida State. This is another kid who's an Elite 11 finalist, and he's a top 200 player, I think, on 247 board. So, like you said, if you're adjusting from one quarterback to the next, you want to bring in similar style of guys. if you're looking at Parson and Collins, they're very similar stylistically for sure. And like you said, going from Jordan Travis to Mackenzie Milton, it's kind of a disaster, man. Like, let's just be honest, because you have two different signal callers who just do so many different things that you have to completely change your offense and what you want to do, what you base out of. Like there's just so many things, man, that it was just so tough switching from one guy to the next. So having Parson, having Collins, being able to have similar style guys, that would be awesome. So if you can bring in both those guys in that class, have them compete behind AJ Duffy as AJ Duffy is getting that opportunity and developing them, that's a great way to go about this. I guess with Collins, is there anything you're hearing about? I know, talk to Dustin. He was saying that there's definitely a connection between him, in the Florida State staff. That's why both of these guys got offers, because of those connections that they have. So, I know Collins is a Baton Rouge kid. I know there's also a wide receiver that Florida State is looking at from Baton Rouge as well. Probably a little less likely to get him. But I know for Collins, it seems like this is very much an open recruitment right now. He does not seem 100% committed to Purdue. And I guess just what's your feel on him getting flipped in general, whether it be to Florida State or another school?
Yeah, I think for Collins, like you said, it does sort of feel like that period of his recruitment where it's starting to open up a little bit. I mean, when you're receiving offers from big-time schools, definitely looking at Oregon, we look at Florida State now, who desperately is trying to fix that quarterback room. That's where it opens up a lot of opportunities for Collins to come play for a big-time brand and college football that's trying to turn things around. And maybe the only thing to his concern would be that they already have, Chris Parson in it. If there's no problem for that and he's willing to come in and compete, and because if you think about it, you still have Jordan Travis too. We'll see what ends up happening with him after this upcoming season. But, you're looking at a pretty good quarterback room that he'd have to work in, develop, get under Coach Tokar's and compete in. And I think they will continue to have really good communication in his recruitment if that's going to work out. I think with both, Tokar's and Norvell, they've got to find some bodies in this room. If it does end up being Collins, then that's a great grab. But I think there is an open type of recruitment right now, now that he's starting to add on more offers, and he definitely will going into his senior year. That's where you see a lot of bumps. I mean, even during camps throughout the next 2 months are big in high school football for traveling, going onto these camps in front of college coaches, going in front of head coaches. There will be a lot this upcoming weekend in front of Coach Norvell, Coach Tokar's that will be throwing that, maybe one or two may end up getting offers, but that's going to be the whole case for around the whole entire country. So expect both Collins and Glenn to get a lot of traction, but Florida State decided to jump in at the late of May to get their name in the hat there and hope starting to build that relationship and the recruitment. It's going to be interesting, most certainly, to watch. Both want to, get to Florida State soon again and take a real nice visit.
I was going to say, I believe Collins already has his official visit scheduled for June 10th, I believe it is. Or is that an unofficial?
I'm looking now. I'll have it in a second. I'm looking back at some of these messages. But I know definitely Glenn wanted to. Like you said, he's trying to commit this month. As for Kai, he's like you had mentioned too, 5-star wide receiver Sheldon Sampson Jr., that relationship there with Collins, because 7-on-7 teammates. So you add on that recruitment, and then you look over on the other side, though, you look at Chris Parson and the tight relationship between 5-star wide receiver Jalen Brown. So either maybe Mike Norvell and Coach Tokar's are playing a game that we're just trying to catch up on and maybe starting to connect the dots, but maybe you're trying to keep a quarterback commit. Chris Parson, who's trying to, has done a really good job as being a bell cow so far in helping recruit. He's hopefully be able to maybe snag Jalen Brown if there's a possibility there. I think there's still more recruiting to do there, in my opinion, on Florida State's side. Some winning is going to have to be the key. But then you look over there and you look at Collins and the relationship with another 5-star wide receiver, and maybe there's some things in the works here, but yeah, it's gonna be fun watching what Collins ends up doing, because it does feel like there's some kind of open side to this, and listening to a lot of these other coaches and not locking things down as much.
Yeah, and this summer is going to be really huge. With Collins, it's a little more unclear what his timeline is. I know with Brock Glenn, we know for a fact he wants to get this recruitment done by the end of the month, going into July. That's, I believe, what he said his plan is. And I do want to go over to Glenn now. Let's bring up some of his junior highlights. I was talking about him just about 10 minutes ago, how he's a very, I would say, Phillip Rivers-esque sort of player. I don't know if that's the perfect way to describe him, but he's a big kid. He's about, is he 6'2"? Okay, he looks bigger than that. I know he's listed at 6'2". I don't believe that for a second. But just the way he stands in the pocket, his presence in the pocket, his ability to climb is super impressive to me. And he's more of your pro-style quarterback, right? He's not Chris Parson. He's not Ricky Collins. But, you know, he just reminds me of your classic pocket passing, you know, kind of climbing the pocket sort of quarterback. You know, I don't know how great that arm is. Maybe we'll get to see that more in person. But what's your feel on Brock Glenn? And, you know, is there any information that you guys have really heard about him so far in his recruitment?
Well, right off the bat, when we were able to talk to Glenn, Dustin had a quick little interview with him. He said he really enjoys. He wants to be coached under Mycah. He respects him. You know, he's a guy that wants to make it to the NFL, and hopefully, you know, that's always the main goal. He said, "I love everything he stands for," talking about Mycah and what he believes in. Really, I trust him coaching me and developing me for the main goal, which is getting into the NFL. And he's not a Collins. He's not a Parson in the way that he's moving around in the pocket as much, like you had mentioned earlier. He goes and will stay in there and stick there. He can still move, yes. You know, this is still fitting Florida State's offensive scheme. You know, we see it a lot with how Jordan Travis develops, and now wanting to keep him in the pocket more as a passer. You know, few dropbacks, and we'll go through the lethal threat there, which we saw him do a lot with Ja'Kai Douglas, your guy who's looking to have a big season ahead. Glenn likes to stay in that pocket. Bigger size, I would say, definitely bigger than Parson. Also, if you're looking at Collins, just bigger size and has a maybe larger frame in the bottom half down the legs. Just not the biggest mobile guy around, and that's fine. You don't really need that too much. You know, if he's got an arm that he can develop and get better in, that's where Glenn has a big time chance of improving. Definitely this upcoming season for him is senior year. And then if he were to, you know, commit and go to Florida State and coach tow cars, you can start to work on things like that. But Glenn, I think, is one that wants to make a commitment this month. And if he does end up coming and getting a visit here, which I know he wants to do very soon, you know, things you could have two quarterbacks in the 2023 class, which, like we talked about, much needed.
Yeah, and with Glenn, like we've been talking about, he is just different than those two guys. But I think the most impressive thing to me is, you know, we talked about arm strength. He might not have, you know, a rocket arm. That's just not how I would describe him, right? But he has great arm talent, and I think you can see that in his highlights, his ability to layer balls over the middle. I think for me, I always love those quarterbacks who have that point guard feel to them, right? That feel where they're just so in control of the situation, where they have touch, ease. And to me, Collins and Glenn, while they might not be similar stylistically, it's dual threat versus pro style guys, they're both really great, you know, with assisting, you know, using the ball the right way. And to me, they're both just very good in terms of their base and in terms of the mechanics they have. In terms of what you're working with, like you mentioned, for Tony Tokars, I think they're both very moldable pieces of clay, right? You can both really build them up and build on what they're already doing so well, because I think both these guys are very, very talented. And obviously, all three of these guys are getting interest from the Elite 11. They're all finalists for that camp, which is obviously, the most famous camp. But also, I know with Glenn, there's huge interest from him in terms of Florida State and both ways, right? But I also know he has other interests that he's receiving. Auburn, Virginia, I believe he has official visits with before he will probably be at Florida State, unless he's there this upcoming weekend. But with Glenn, what's your feel for him in terms of the other schools being interested, the SEC interest he's getting? Do you feel like Florida State is really kind of in this fight for him, or is it too early to tell?
I don't think it's too crazy early. I mean, you look at the SEC, you've got Auburn. I think you got this fits Mississippi State's kind of quarterbacks here, but Mississippi State also throws an offer there, and Glenn fits that kind of mold perfectly for what kind of offense Mississippi State has been running for a little while. Those are those kind of big-sized guys that like to throw the ball and throw the ball a lot. Maybe not too much entirely a mobile guy, but Glenn, I think
if you can sling it, man, Mike Leach is gonna love you.
That's what I'm saying. If you could throw the ball a lot, then Mississippi State's got their guy. But I think Auburn, Mississippi State, but Florida State jumping in here, I don't think it's too late whatsoever. Maybe not too early either. What I'm really getting a feel from is Glenn's relationship with Mike Norvell, and he's talked very highly of him. He respects him, and I think that's really worth noting after a team and the coach that has only won 8 games in 2 seasons so far, still believing in the process and the build that Coach Norvell is trying to do. And the biggest thing, his goal is to get outside of college and get into the NFL and be a pro quarterback. He's looking at Coach Norvell and saying, I can be developed behind that coach. I can learn under Coach Tokars, who is a really young coach now, getting a chance in the quarterback room, who is going to have probably, if you're able to bring 2 quarterbacks in, he's going to have a lot of responsibilities on his hands.
He's going to have quite the handful, man.
Yeah, continuing to develop. But if you're grabbing one or two, the Collins, Glenn, if I'm just picking one of those, if it goes that way, you're already bringing in talent that you don't have to do really too crazy much with. You understand the system. You're definitely going to continue to develop, but it's not the case to where you've got Tate Rodemaker there. And like we said, we're not putting too much on AJ Duffy after the spring. There's definitely a lot more that I think you and I, we want to see a lot more from, because it wasn't a good grade from what we saw in the spring. And we understand it's just a spring, but still, I just don't think a quarterback of the future for the program is anywhere behind Jordan Travis at all. And so Glenn, Collins, those are your best chances for that. And like I said, there's not much work you really have to do there. Those are truly talented quarterbacks that, like you said, receiving SEC offers, and now Florida State's trying to jump in here in the summer of 2022 to try to grab one of them.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see how all this plays out. Obviously, I think it's going to be a domino situation where you see one make a decision, you'll see how the others go, and including Parson as well. This next month is going to be really intriguing, especially with Glenn having that timeline, right? With Brock Glenn, we know he wants to get this commitment done by the end of the month. So, things could get really, really interesting here towards the end of June for all these guys. But we've touched on Jordan Travis a little bit. I want to actually talk about this being his final season. So I think, we all had an inclination that the staff might be expecting this, that Jordan himself might be feeling that this is his last sort of season at Florida State. But I think what really confirmed a lot of our suspicions, multiple media outlets, right, just the media across the board, is that Florida State has serious interest in multiple 2023 guys. So given what we've been talking about, Parsons, Glenn, Collins, that interest in multiple guys, man, that is just not great news for Jordan Travis. And for you, Logan, do you think this is a situation where it's mutual, where Jordan Travis sees this as, hey, you know what, I've gotten the opportunity here. I'm going to get one more full starting year. And then from there, I'm either going to be going pro, maybe even transferring, figuring something else out. But I guess my whole thing with Jordan is that this is the season for him to prove it. I think he hasn't been given a fair shake in the sense that his receiving options are just not good enough to show off his arm talent and his ability. And I think we're going to see more of that this season. I mean, Mycah Pittman is your number one receiver for this season, and he's really not a true number one guy, right? I think Winston Wright was supposed to be that guy, but we really don't know where Winston Wright is at right now. And even if the staff is really optimistic about getting him closer to the start of the season, given the nature of his injury and how far out it is, it's just there's not a consistent timeline that you can really go off right now. A lot can happen in between now and September and August. So I guess with Jordan, man, do you feel like this is 100% his last year? And then if it is, why do you think that is?
I'm not entirely sold yet on that. I think too, it is spring. Now we're heading into summer, so we're kind of contemplating things here and there. I think Florida State would love to have Jordan Travis back for another year. At this rate, FSU fans, you got to have a veteran guy in there. You don't want to go into 2023. I'm sorry. You don't want to go into 2023. You have one right now. You only have one committed. Maybe you get two, but then, you've got Tate Rodemaker if he intends on staying, and AJ Duffy. I'm sorry, but that's not a really good thing to be looking at. You would love to have Jordan Travis back for another year. I think that's, unless something crazy happens, we haven't even gotten into a game yet and what Jordan Travis is going to look like. I thought that he looked pretty well during the spring. He was by far the best quarterback in the room. I think there was a lot of just kind of silliness, of some things being talked about the other quarterbacks regarding Rodemaker, maybe AJ Duffy, but sorry, Jordan Travis was it wasn't even close. It wasn't even funny how not close it was.
Well, and Logan, let's just paint the picture too, because I think the one thing that fans might understand a little bit, but I really think is one of the most important parts of this, is that Jordan Travis gets his best ability taken away in the spring environment, in spring practices. He can't be that ultimate joystick playmaker that we see on the field on Saturdays, right? So given that you take away Jordan Travis's, it's his biggest asset by far, right? That ability he has. And then with Tate Rodemaker, and I think why he gets so much attention in the spring and spring only is because you're just a pocket passer in the spring. And for Tate, he can sit back there, try and pick the defense apart. But even then, Logan, even given that Tate is getting the advantages of, it being suited more to his skill set, Jordan just looks better than he does. And I think a lot of people are still vastly underrating Jordan's arm talent and his processing as a quarterback. To me, I feel like he just makes jump after jump. The more and more time he gets on the football field, on the practice field, the more time he's able to spend in this offense and have that consistency around him. I just think this is a kid that you put real playmakers that in this offense that could win one-on-one. You would see what kind of ability Jordan Travis has, but that's just not the case for this team. They don't have those playmakers. They don't really have those guys who can fully show off Jordan Travis' skill set. So especially in that spring atmosphere, him being that impressive to me blew me out of the water. I expected Tate to look good, so even maybe closer to Jordan, but I gotta be honest, man, I thought Jordan was excellent in his ability as a pocket quarterback, his ability beyond his skill as a playmaker, running the ball and avoiding defenders, forcing missed tackles. I just thought he looked damn near elite as a passer this past spring.
It was very rare to watch Jordan Travis throw an interception during the spring. It was very rare. We talked about it quite a bit, asking each other, well, has he thrown one this week yet? And that's something Jordan Travis, near the latter half of last year, did a phenomenal job of making sure that those interceptions, and he fixed that. He developed, he progressed, and that's something that you want to see from your veteran quarterback. This is his true full spring as being a true starter. Norvell told us that in the opening press conference, getting ready for the spring. This is their starting quarterback. The staff really sees a lot in Jordan Travis. I mean, the whole program does. We hear things left and right and everything. They really like Jordan Travis, and I don't think anybody wants to push away Jordan Travis. The biggest knock on him is health right now. If there's something that can be fixed there, I don't know, if that's behind the scenes things going on, and that's off-season training. It looks like he's gained 10 pounds pretty much, getting close now, heading into the rest of the summer, 15 pounds. That's big for a guy that if he can keep his speed, which he's one of the shiftiest and fastest guys on the team, able to add on some more pounds. And if that helps his health this upcoming season, then boom, that's huge for him. Maybe number two is just his reads, the deep ball, and we heard really good things out of those scrimmages. We weren't able to go to those, sadly. I wasn't open up to the media. Norvell, come on. Let us get one chance, please. One chance. We won't give away all the secrets. We won't give away all the secrets.
We did get to see them in Dope
goal line
day, which was really great. That was a fun day. But you're right. We didn't really get to see him in the scrimmages where it sounded like he dominated. And I do want to just touch on what you talked about for a second. Jordan Travis is obviously the leader of Florida State, but it's not because he's the starting quarterback. It's because of the respect all the other players have for Jordan Travis, including guys like Jared Verse, who, not that he should be, have a bad relationship with Jordan Travis, but it's not every year you see, potentially one of your best defensive players being best friends with the quarterback, being very close to him. So I just think Jordan Travis has this infectious energy that the team is really feeling. And I don't think they really, they just don't care what the fans think. They believe in Jordan, man. They absolutely believe in Jordan. And they think he's going to be that guy to push them over the top. So there's that huge belief in Jordan Travis. And obviously, I think, like you said, the staff probably wants Jordan back. But let's get to our original question. If it does become a situation where Jordan Travis is no longer a Seminole after the 2022 season, why do you think that is?
Well, I'm trying to think of, I don't really see too much of if you're bringing in two quarterbacks that are talented, that fit that same kind of build. I mean, you look at Ohio State, they do it quite a bit. Yes, some guys get opportunities to leave there.
But like we talked about, that's the nature of it, Logan, right? You see guys in the past few years, Quinn Ewers, obviously, famously Joe Burrow transferred. But having all those quarterbacks and trying, getting one of the more talented guys instead of having a guy transfer in, figuring that situation out, having in-house guys and then one of them having to transfer because the room is so good, it's not a bad problem to have at all.
Yeah, I see. So I'm looking at this past offseason, looking at the transfer room. Florida State didn't grab anybody alone. That kind of tells me that they feel fine, definitely with Jordan Travis being their starter. They feel solidified there. That's fine. I still think, I wish there was better chances out there, and there might have not been for Florida State to grab someone. They could have gone over and grabbed Jaden Daniels, Arizona State transfer, who's going to LSU, who could end up being the starter against Florida State and Baton Rouge and New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans, where, things get really interesting between two quarterbacks that are really elusive, dual threat guys. But, Jane Daniels likes to throw the ball away and throw it into the opponent's hands. And that's something Jordan Travis, like we talked about, progressed and got better at. I think Florida State really does like Jordan Travis. I'm not set and on the whole, you bring in two quarterbacks, that's going to make Jordan Travis want to leave or transfer somewhere. I just don't feel that unless it's something to where, Jordan Travis wants to go pro. He feels like he's ready for that. That would be my feeling on it. I don't think he would be like, yes, let's say he has a full healthy season. Knock on wood, everything's good to go. Does he want to transfer and go play for another university like that and understand a whole new system, which he's kind of done already? He's already transferred from Louisville. Right. I just don't see that to be the case at all. Like I said, this program and the people inside of that building, the more that I've heard from, talk so highly of Jordan Travis. And then if you look at his teammates, we interview all of them, after every practice, and how much do they talk about Jordan Travis, the way that he is helping being a leader. We saw it day one, going over and talking with AJ Duffy saying, this has got to be a big spring for you. Let's go. Let's get it, and being a big time leader for AJ Duffy. He's that way for the whole entire team. He's taken a hold of that. And, the only thing I'd see him going if it is the pro route, but right now though, not happening. Right. Not going to happen unless something crazy happens this season. That'd be the only reason. I just don't see him wanting to transfer to a whole new system and learn that and then try to compete, which nowadays, you're probably going to have to compete with somebody. I don't feel that way. And I think closer to home too, it just doesn't all add up to me. I don't know. We'll see how fall camp and maybe some things get come up out of the water with some of the rumors or maybe, but I just don't feel it right now. I think Jordan Travis, and unless he blows up this upcoming year, I just don't see where he wants to leave. And I definitely don't see him wanting to transfer to another university.
I think I'm pretty much on the same page as you. I totally agree with that. I think barring something unforeseen, right? Whether that be good or bad, like I'm not saying like injury, like just something huge happens, there will be that change likely. But to play devil's advocate just a little, Logan, I think the one perspective that really stuck with me when I was considering Jordan Travis and potentially leaving is this is his 5th year of college football. And I just wonder if he's never going to be an NFL quarterback, if that's not his path, and he does want to get to the pros, will he have to make that jump this year? I guess that's more the question I'm asking myself, Logan, because he could go out and prove it in 2023 again, but I still don't think that leads to him getting drafted as an NFL quarterback or a team drafting him very highly. I see him as a project player. I think, look, I'm one to say I think it's super dumb when you see, guys coming into the NFL like Lamar Jackson, right? And the entire league wants to make them into something they're not. But with Jordan, I just don't think he's an NFL quarterback. So I think if you're trying to make him into something he's not in that sense, I just wonder how much longer, doing that extra year, doing that 6th year at Florida State, how much that would help him in the future. Because I think if it's a situation where he genuinely feels like, or it is understood by him and communicated to him by the pro level guys that you're not going to be an NFL quarterback, but we think you can be an NFL player, in whatever capacity that might be. That is a situation where I see Jordan Travis saying to himself, you know what, I could come back for 2023, but then you're also risking a lot for 2023. Because I really, I think 2022 is that year to capitalize, to push the envelope, right? I just don't know if he can do it that much more again the year after.
Yeah, no, that's definitely worth noting because with Jordan Travis, he's been in such a weird situation with, he had Mackenzie Millen come in last year and, that seemed to be maybe a competition until we got to see a little glance of those scrimmages that were open to the public. And that wasn't even close. It was well known that Jordan Travis was going to win that job. And then you go back the year prior and Jordan Travis wasn't even in the top 2 in that quarterback room. I mean, it was Blackman, then Tate Rodemaker was thrown out there and Purdy wasn't even available yet, still dealing with recovering after that injury that happened in the spring. And then Jordan Travis got his chance in that game. Offense just moved down the field. That's something that I think Florida State fans need to realize too. With this offense, that team moves down the field, and you got to learn too that Jordan Travis can do it on the big stage while being in a big-time environment, inside Doak against a rival that you haven't beaten in a little while with Miami. A drive of a lifetime, taking them down the field, connecting with Ja'Kai Douglas. Then obviously 4th and 14 there with God, I just forgot his dad.
Oh,
Parchment,
man,
AP, baby. I was rolling. AP.
No. You dropped the ball on that one, Logan. Come on. You gotta apologize to AP.
AP, I am sorry. I hope the Carolina Panthers things are going well for you up there and the opportunity you were given. But just to see him navigate down the field, it's starting to get repetitive from maybe fans and onlookers of how much more are you going to want from Jordan Travis? I mean, I understand. I think the biggest thing, if you want to, like we said, knock on, it's the health. But how much more are you wanting to get if he's continuing to improve like this? The thing is, I would understand if fans are having a real problem if things are digressing and he's not getting better. He's throwing more interceptions. The offense isn't clicking. But goddamn, man, how much more do you want when he's able to go down the field? You look at his passing. You look at his touchdown and interception ratio from the last quarter of the season. What else do you want? And if he's going to continue to progress, now being the starter, this is his offense, this is his system. Just like Coach Atkins said, this isn't Norvell's offense, this isn't my offense. This is Jordan Travis's offense heading into 2022. Now, I know we're looking ahead at maybe 2023, and if he stays, I think it'd be gigantic for Florida State to have Jordan Travis come back and be at the 2023 quarterback, be that veteran, and have hopefully too a Parson, a Collins, or a Parson Glenn, whichever of those combinations, to sit behind Jordan Travis, a true dual threat guy that knows his system and can lead Florida State to a big season, hoping that in 2022, this season, Florida State at least grabs 7 or 8 wins and helps in that recruiting front.
And I think the one thing with me for Jordan Travis moving forward, and I want to end the Jordan Travis discussion on this, is the weight. You touched on that specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he can be 220 pounds, I think this is a much different discussion. But I think just because of how naturally slight that his frame is, right, and the fact that I just think he's a hard gainer, he just doesn't put on weight very fast, if he can gain enough weight to be durable enough over the length of the season, this is a different discussion. I just don't think I'm anticipating that quite yet, Logan. And it's more, I'm not going to believe it till I see it, right? You got to prove it, and you got to prove that you can be healthy for that 12-game stretch over the course of the season. And obviously there were some strange things that happened last year. I mean, the entire team got the flu for a week, right? So obviously very strange. And like you said, the Louisville game probably would have been a different outcome had he played. But I think I'm not 100% sure this is Jordan Travis's last season, but it's something to monitor. And I think it's fair to say at the end of the year, they'll be at a crossroads of sort where a decision just has to be made. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, May 11th is whenever Jordan Travis posted that video of him up to 208 pounds.
Yep.
If he's able to add just 10 more of that, even, you look at Coach Storms, when he's been able to do. If he can give him the Joshua Farmer load up package of proteins and calories, then I think he's going to be able to gain it if he's able to put him on the farmer plan. But if he's able to add 10 more pounds, and really that's the big thing of just health, keeping him healthy. And he did. Look at it last year. He did so much better of sliding, getting out of the way, getting to the sideline when it's not needed. There's no reason to take those hits. You kind of saw it maybe in the Florida game where he was taking some risks. But you know what? That's potentially could be your last game of the season, which sadly ended up being. But he's a guy that will drive. He'll almost be a little physical with you and try to run you over, too, if he's going to try to get that first down. That's something you don't want to see in September and October going on whatsoever. But a guy that likes to compete, he's going to play for his teammates, and it goes to show too. He gets hurt. It seems to be an elbow problem. There might be other things that we don't know of behind the scenes, but he's a guy that will go out of the game. He'll do whatever kind of fixes the training staff can do with him, and he'll go back out there. And that's something this team really respects. That's why they love him. And that's something Florida State hasn't had in a while. A guy
remember the Florida game, Logan. I remember
first quarter.
First quarter, it looks like he dislocated his shoulder. I don't think that's what happened, but he's walking off the field, like with his arm just like hanging out of the socket, almost it looked like. So for him to come back in that game, like you said, fight the way he did, he got a lot of teammates respect that day. Not that he hadn't already before, but man, the hits Jordan Travis is taking, to me, that's the thing, Mike Norvell. You should gotta fucking figure this out, Mike. Don't get Jordan hit that way that we saw him hit last season, because I'm sorry, but when you need Jordan Travis as much as the Seminoles need Jordan Travis, that durability is so key for him this year. It is very much on the coach as well as the player to protect him. So I think the Seminoles need to do a better job of protecting Jordan, especially in their play design. I mean, I just feel like Logan, there was a certain point in some parts of the season where he was a battering ram, and the offense was Jordan. If there's a receiver open, throw it to him. If the first couple of guys aren't open, run for your effing life, man. Because the hits we saw him sustain, especially in those first 6 games, it was just unnecessary, unsustainable for a 12-game season. So it'll be interesting to see if Jordan can gain more weight, where his body's at heading into the fall. Seems like he's as healthy as he's been. So this would be a really good opportunity for him in that sense.
I know we're moving on real quick, but I was going to mention too, get ready for the Jordan Travis and Mycah Pittman show, because this whole spring, I thought that was by far his favorite target. By far, they connected very well, and we saw really good signs from Pittman last year. If you're looking at a guy, a playmaker, red zone, anywhere on the field, watch out for that Mycah Pittman and Jordan Travis connection. The only reason that's happening, Jordan Travis, it was rare. We didn't get to see it a lot. He did when needed, but Jordan Travis was staying in that pocket as long as he could, trying to dial down. He had a fourth read, I believe, the second week of spring practice, which I've never seen. We've never seen Jordan Travis do something like that and connected over the middle to a wide open Ontario Wilson. That's something we just don't see from Jordan Travis as much. He wants to stay in that pocket. We saw signs of that last year, but this spring it was not likely to see Jordan Travis running around outside of that pocket, getting nervous and getting antsy. That's really, really nice to see. But get ready for that Jordan Travis and Mycah Pittman show. That was really fun to watch this spring.
No, that's going to be a really fun duo, and I think it's more on Malik's development more than anything. We saw the flashes from him. He's just got to put it together and work on his consistency, because I think while Mycah Pittman to me, I think Mycah's wide receiver 1, but I think it's more because Mycah is so dependable, and we know exactly what we're going to be getting from him on a game-to-game, target-to-target, quarter-to-quarter basis. So I love Malik. I love that connection. I think you're right. Jordan is going to give him opportunities to make plays downfield for sure. Yeah. But this was a big offseason for this Florida State team. Obviously, they're able to get some transfers, and we know for Mike Norvell, we talked about this a little bit ago. The fact is he's not been as aggressive in the quarterback transfer market recently. They maybe dipped in their toes into that water a little bit. I mean, Jordan Travis, even like you mentioned, transfer guy that they brought in, but the transfers were so important for Florida State last season, Logan. The reason that Florida State elevated to the level they did, even though I know a lot of people will still say they're 5-7. The reason that we saw that defense especially improve is because of transfers that they brought in. So if you're gonna pick one guy from this 2022 transfer class, obviously there's some big names: Trey Benson, Jared Verse, guys, Bless Harris, Mycah Pittman. But who's gonna be that one guy for you who think is gonna make the biggest impact this offseason, or from this offseason?
Oh yeah, I mean you kind of already know, Ben. I wasn't salivating. I promise I wasn't salivating. Nobody judged me during the spring practices, but I told you, I kept on dragging you around and telling you, come with me. We're gonna watch what Jared Verse does. And right off the bat, wasn't getting first team reps. Was jumping in there in the second team for quite a while, but those last 2, maybe 3 weeks, that's a starting defensive end. And I know the big discussion later on will be about, losing Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas. Right now, you feel really good about having Jared Verse on your team. There's a reason why so many schools immediately blew up his phone, his email. I mean, Tennessee was pushing really hard there at the end to grab him. I really like the way that Jared Verse looked this spring, and I think there's no knocking on a lot of these other transfers because they're not far away from Jared Verse. I think the biggest thing Coach Norvell told us after one of the practices that, all right, maybe it was the last one, and just the feeling of what he got from the early enrollees along with the transfers, everybody just felt like they had already been there for a couple months. It didn't take too much of acclimating, and I think that goes to what Norvell does with the guys and the personalities and the characteristics in the locker room with building a team that guys get along with one another. And Jared Verse, right off the bat, building relationships. He's a big time competitor. He might be the hungriest guy to get after your shit. He's not a nice guy on the field. He'll let you know. And it's funny, watching him go up and battle against Treshaun Ward. And we love you, Treshaun, but the size difference is a big time size difference. Yeah. But you saw them going at it. We saw in the goal line when we were in Doak, Ben, watching Treshaun Ward and Jared Verse get chippy with one another. But the biggest thing was Jared Verse manhandling, some of the linemen. And that's something Florida State is going to have to watch out for. You don't want to see that head into the season. But, they had some good battles against Robert Scott off to the side. And, also in the run game, Jared Verse would plug up some holes there. And he is a guy that I don't think his motor stops. You look at him on the sideline, too, wanting to get back onto another play. He's jumping around. He's talking to the offense, letting them know he's coming. Let me in, let me in. He is going to be very fun to watch. And I think, for Florida State, one of your biggest question marks is who's going to be those two defensive ends, and how do you replace those two stars that you had with Keir Thomas, Jermaine Johnson? I think you're getting a young baby Jermaine Johnson with Jared Verse, just a little bit faster, in my opinion. A guy that has a little bit more, like I said, more motor to him. And there's no knock whatsoever on Jermaine Johnson, first-round pick. Jared Verse is very, very impressive, and I think that's by far probably my pick on the biggest transfer heading into this 2022 season that's going to play a really, really good impact for Florida State this upcoming season.
Yeah, to me, he's going to be a huge impact guy. Jared Verse, he's a really talented pass rusher. I definitely want to see how well he's able to do some of the smaller things that we saw a guy like Jermaine Johnson just excel at, right? His run game, fitting the gaps, just that ability on the field to, like, it just seemed like Jermaine Johnson knew as much as the coaches did in terms of what was going on the field. The guy just looked like a savant at the defensive end for me. So Jared Verse, I think he's going to make that huge impact. I think he made a lot of great points with him. He was blowing up this offensive line. Robert Scott, Bless Harris, both of them talked about how much better, those guys are getting because they're going up against Jared Verse. So I think, and we'll talk about this later on, that you're not going to be able to replace Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas. But I think bringing in Jared Verse and elevating the guys around him, guys like McClendon, Peyton, they'll have waves of pass rushers, and they'll be very successful, throwing in multiple guys. But I think for me, Jared Verse is that guy who's going to be in, down, out, right? He is a 3-down player. He is going to be really, really great in the pass rush, especially. I mean, I think his bend is awesome, man. Just his that balance he has coming off the edge. Yeah, he just was one of the most impressive football players, let alone transfer players for me. So I think he nailed that one.
I think Coach Storms has done a really good job, too, with a lot of these guys coming in. It's taken a while for some of these players to get acclimated to Coach Storms. Tour of duty is something that just absolutely sucks, from what we've heard from players. Like, it blows, and it hurts even more for these transfers that haven't gone through this. We've had a few conversations, Johnny Wilson saying, that this shit sucks. It's not fun to go through whatsoever. And, with Jared Verse, first off, just looking at him, watching him walk into practice, you're like, okay, this is an SEC type build player, just like Jermaine Johnson was coming from Georgia. This is a, NFL caliber type player just from your physical attributes. But when it comes onto the field, you're getting a nasty, nasty player. Sometimes things had to be toned down, and I love it. I think Coach Norvell absolutely loves it too, but they had to have a few conversations during some of the practices to maybe tone some things down. But if you go back to the 2011, 12, 13 days, that was every damn snap. You're looking at Telvin Smith, LaMarcus Joyner, Timmy Jernigan, that kind of mean tenacity and talking shit to the offensive linemen. And like you said, those guys told us they're getting better because of Jared Verse and what he brings. He's going to talk, but he's going to back it up and make some plays. I think we saw him in the IPF during one of the series had 2 back-to-back sacks and had a stuff on the run. I mean, like you said, that's a 3-down defensive end right there. And like I said, I think he's got a little bit more motor than Jermaine Johnson. I think he's just more lean, maybe more athletic. He's younger. And that's a really good sign for Florida State. They're not going to replace, you're not going to get maybe, I don't know, you're not going to get another Jermaine Johnson, but you really do like what you see in Jared Verse. Can he be of that same caliber of Jermaine Johnson? I think so. I think the ceiling is high for Jared Verse. I know that we don't want to go overboard and such after a spring, but I'm sorry. I was able to watch last fall's practices with Jermaine Johnson, Ian Keir Thomas, and now I get to see Jared Verse. I don't see much of a fall off in my opinion. I'm more of the other side. Derek McLendon looks like he's a fast guy, but at least for defensive ends, you feel good with Jared Verse, maybe being a 1 and 2 alongside maybe McLendon this upcoming season.
Yeah, and I think he fits right into that Jermaine Johnson role, actually. That Fox defensive end in this Florida State defense. I think the great thing, too, about Verse to me, and I think this entire class is you have guys. This is not a knock on Jermaine Johnson, but you have guys who are going to be here for multiple years, right? This is not a one-and-done situation like it was last season, where you're going to get that production and that player's going to leave. Jared Verse is going to build something at Florida State, and I think, I'm going to be interested to see just how quick that impact is in year one. I'm not going to go as far as you did to say he's quite Jermaine Johnson, but I do think, Florida State having to replace the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, well, you're not going to get a 1-to-1 replacement. I think they'll be able to produce a good enough pass rush, though. They will not have the 90 pressures between 2 players that they had last season with Thomas and Johnson, but I think they'll be able to get after the quarterback, and especially this interior of the defensive line really just aids out those other guys. But the guy for me, in terms of the transfer guys, and I wasn't all in on him at first. I think part of that was because he was injured. It's Trey Benson, man. Trey Benson, to me, I see running back 1 written all over him. This is a guy who his speed is elite to me. Once we saw him in full go in the spring game, really being able to put together consistent series, get consistent play time on the field, he just unleashed his ability. And I think it's going to be very similar to the structure that they had last season, where Jashawn Corbin, he was running back 1, but you had Trayshawn Ward and Lawrence Toafili and these other guys in their support role, right, to do some of the things that Corbin maybe didn't do as well. I think for me, the way I see Benson fitting in is they'll use him in the tosses. They'll use him in the counters. Any way you can get him outside the tackles and get him moving in space so he can use that speed, they're going to figure out a way to get him there. So that is going to be his role. And I think he's going to get even more yards, touches, and scores than a guy like Corbin had last year. And then you go to Trayshawn Ward. He's going to be more of your in-between-the-tackles guy for me. He's going to be in the red zone, more of a thumper. That's what I see happening. And I think for Trey Benson, I mentioned with Jared Verse, right? Multiple years you're going to be getting Jared Verse. You're going to get him for not just a one-and-done, senior season. Yeah. Trey Benson's the same boat. You're going to get a lot of production, I believe, out of him over his whole FSU career. And I think this is the type of guy that's going to be coming on strong this season. And then by next season or even the year after, he's going to be maybe not quite Cam Akers at Dalvin Cook, but just below that for me in terms of the production we're seeing out of Trey Benson. I have high expectations.
Those are great 2 points. You get 2 guys on offense and defense for a couple of years. And, you don't have those one-and-dones like you had, primarily with Jermaine Johnson on the defensive side. On the offensive side, you get Benson, who really just once arriving, that was the biggest thing for us once get to be there when media was allowed to see these guys walk in. Trey Benson, that's a big boy. That's a big boy. But my biggest question was, can he move? Does he have a burst? And he does have that second, maybe even a third gear. We got to see it in the spring game too, and how I think Florida State's going to utilize him a bit. Everything was pretty generalized for our viewing, but you got to see what Benson can do and open space. And that wasn't really what maybe we were expecting. We thought maybe he could come in and be maybe that bigger back as maybe we thought DJ Williams was going to be. Which, by the way, DJ Williams is no longer a bowling ball. He's a little mini guy now.
Yeah.
Compared
he's shredded,
to,
man. He's shredded.
Compared to Campbell and now Trey Benson, those are your two big backs. I think Benson is probably my guy, along with maybe on the offense, Mycah Pittman. Had a slower start to the spring. We got to see a lot of Johnny Wilson, who I think not as consistent as Mycah Pittman. You remember the day, Ben, where Mycah Pittman decided to go off like a MF? I mean,
I remember that day, Logan. And
we were in the perfect spot for it. I told you, let's go to the end zone here. I think something's going to happen, just a wizard. I had like a wizard hat on, I felt like someone's having, but we got the perfect view of just Mycah Pittman back to back to back. I mean, big time catches in the end zone on the corner over some DBs. And, that was good coverage by these DBs too. There was no knock on them, but Mycah Pittman was just beating them in the battles for the ball. And that's not what you were expecting from Pittman.
Dude, his jump ball ability, his contested catches that we saw all of spring, that's what I was blown away by, Logan. It's like every single time you see the ball go up for a 50-50 or even less than a 50-50 ball, and you see Mycah elevating, and you're like, oh, there's defenders there. He's not going to be able to make that catch. He kept making those catches, and especially like you said, later on in that spring session, those practices, he just was stringing together practice after practice after practice. And I think he will be used in that gadget role like we expect him to. We'll see the sweeps. We'll see the movement across the line of scrimmage, doing all this interesting stuff with him. But, man, I think he really does have a very high floor as just your consistent kind of number 2 receiver role.
Mm-hmm. That was definitely a fun day to watch him, and we got to see him be one of the leaders on offense, right behind Trey Benson during the spring game, and how they're going to utilize Pittman. The biggest thing I think with him is his elusiveness to understand what's going on in game. That's something that a lot of running backs do really well. You look at Dalvin Cook. I still think too, Treshaun Ward has that same kind of ability with his eyes, reading what kind of blocks are coming, understanding where those safeties and maybe those linebackers coming down at. That's something that he can do, on the offense, but also special teams. He's going to play a factor and punt return, maybe others, but specifically definitely punt return. And he did a really good job at that at Oregon. He just understands what's going to happen ahead of him. He could kind of read what's going to be shifting around and understanding how to get the most out of the yards ahead of him. And so Pittman, I think probably my 1 and 2, Benson looking really well. And he's kind of shut up the crowd about him and the health concerns and all that kind of stuff. And we talked with David Johnson at the luncheon before the spring and said, this is a guy that is really, really fast. And I think you're gonna kind of be surprised of how well he looks and how healthy he looks. And I think in the second scrimmage, Trey Benson told us that he felt the most healthy. He felt like with some of those cuts that he was having, that's where it kind of shifted off the worrisome. And now he's a full head of steam for this upcoming season. These transfers, the biggest thing to me was they showed up, they acclimated very well, and it seems like they've already been here for a year or two. That's something that I think the staff does a really good job on, is bringing these guys in and letting them understand and building the chemistry with their teammates. It's not like you're bringing in some guys on a one-year thing. You look at Jermaine Johnson and what he did. He's in Tallahassee now every other weekend, now traveling from New York City. He's coming down here. He's going to play a pivotal part, I think, too. And just being a true alumni to Florida State University, that's something that these players are coming in under the staff and really getting to know the team, the university, the area around them in Tallahassee, and really truly falling in love with the staff. And that's going to create guys, because these practices aren't easy. They suck. I mean, they really do suck. I couldn't imagine you get one true water break throughout the whole entire practice. You had tour of duty you're going through. It's not easy. The only way for that to happen is if you're building some kind of chemistry and they like the staff and they believe in the staff and they respect the staff and they believe in the vision that Coach Norvell is doing. So that's something the transfers have done very well so far, along with the early enrollees.
Yeah, and again, I want to emphasize this, Logan. Most of these guys, bless Harris, one guy we didn't even include, guys who aren't going to be one and done guys who are going to be here for multiple seasons at Florida State. So I think for Mike Norvell and the staff, to me, that's a really key component of this. Not just having those, plug and play, fill a hole, worry about it the next season guys. They have starters that they're going to be playing for the next 2, if not 3 seasons in a lot of cases. So I thought this transfer class was hugely important, and we've seen Mike Norvell and the staff. They thrive off the transfers. They thrive off, filling in those spots where they need to if they strike out, like they did at the wide receiver position, kind of, for that 2022 class. But yeah, I think like you nailed it. This transfer class, they are all in. They believe in what they're doing at Florida State. And I think a lot of these guys are going to make a big impact. I think that's the cool thing about this class is it's not just going to be, a Jermaine Johnson or, a Jordan Travis. It's not going to be one guy that we see really excel this season. I think we're going to see this transfer class pay out in dividends, especially early on in the season and even going, further and further 2 seasons down the line. But I do want to, we've been talking a lot about this spring. I want to focus on one specific part of it. And we see these position groups kind of, get together a lot. And obviously there are certain positions that are better than others. Wide receiver position, not one of the best at Florida State right now, I would say. But for you, Logan, overall, this is a team that has some elite players, some future pro guys, some future Sunday guys, and some pretty good positions. So when you're looking up and down the depth chart, is there one position group that stands out to you as the most dominant or the best for the Seminoles this year?
Both sides of the ball I can pick.
Hey, okay. Either way, go for it, man.
I'm going to go probably defensive line. I think this is by far. I thought it was one of the best last year, maybe the best for Florida State. The scary thing is it's going to get a lot better too. You're bringing back Fabian Lovett. You're bringing back Robert Cooper, who absolutely dominated this last spring, looked very well too. I mean, Fabian Lovett looked really good last year. And those are your two solidified. Those are your two starters. Those guys, are NFL type players. Robert Cooper, you're lucky to have him back. That's a true veteran. Fabian Lovett, another true veteran, played in the SEC. He knows how to get after it and is a huge leader. You got two big dogs there. Behind them, though, I'm really excited for Malcolm Ray. I'm really excited for Jared Jackson. I think Jared Jackson hit a different kind of gear this last spring, and I think he's going to play a big-time factor this upcoming season. You still got Farmer, too, behind those two. So you feel really good about your interior there than, I know Florida State and recruiting, you got to hopefully bring in some more defensive linemen, but at least heading into this 2022 season, this is by far going to be, I think, the strongest unit on Florida State's team. It's a battle between that and maybe the running back position, but just off of what we got to see and what we saw last year, this room did a really good job of getting after the quarterback, stuffing the run. When you're lining up Lovett and Robert Cooper, it's not easy. And I know we don't want to dive so much into the spring, but that was just absolutely domination. That was not even fair whatsoever what we saw during some of those 11-on-11s.
I felt bad for the interior guys on that offensive line.
Yeah. You weren't going to run in there. You just were not going to run the ball in there.
You just weren't. You weren't going to move either of those guys, right? Those two were just. I mean, you said you don't want to go into it for spring, but man, those two were some of the most impressive to me. I really think when you talk about that depth of that room too, I think that's the key of that being one of the stronger rooms at Florida State. One of the strongest position rooms is they can go and dip deep into their depth chart, right? And I think that's going to be part of the strength of that defensive line as further and further the season goes along, bumps and bruises along the way. They won't have to worry about, if we lose this guy, what do we do with this spot? They are 2 deep, even 3 deep at a lot of these positions along the interior, especially, man. I think that interior, to me, it's going to be elite for them this season. I think Florida State's going to dominate from the interior. And that run defense, it might be the best in the conference, just because of those two guys alone. You touch on them, Lovett and Cooper. 2 really talented guys who are going to be doing a lot of great things for Florida State this year.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to be the best in the conference. I think there's definitely a lot of other talented squads out there. Just off of what you got at the front, and then your depth, 2 starters behind Lovett and Cooper. I think Malcolm Ray we saw really good signs of last year. We got to see in the latter half where you were seeing Fabian Lovett tell Odell Higgins and Adam Fuller, I want to give Malcolm Ray a starting chance. Throw him in there, coach. I believe in him on an away game too. And you see Malcolm Ray go in there and start. And you look at the spring, I thought that, him and Jared Jackson, I think people are sleeping on Jared Jackson, and that's understandable. We get to see more of these in practices. A lot of people just go off of what they saw in the spring game and such. But behind the scenes and what we got to see in him, what I love going is watching the 3-on-3 battles during the scrimmages where you see Coach Atkins have his squad versus Odell Higgins, two phenomenal coaches at their crafts. But watching some of these guys dominate, like Jared Jackson, someone I think pissed off Jared Jackson. I don't know who did it. Someone said something to him near that end of the spring, but he hit something that I was not expecting. And not only just on the play, but a leader. There's a lot of leaders in that room. That's going to be one of the top defensive line in the conference, and has a chance to be really special outside of the conference, maybe in the country too. If you're adding in maybe some of these defensive ends that will hopefully be able to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, in that defensive line room, but specifically that interior, it's just going to be one of the best rooms for Florida State this year. Can I say one of the best, Logan? Because I'm going to challenge you. You didn't even mention this. You talk about the running backs, talk about the defensive line.
I know where you're going. I feel like are you going? You're picking another position group.
Yeah, let's talk about Florida State's best player, Jamie Robinson. Man, the safety room that Florida State is going to have this year. I'm writing a very
he's down there. I'm trying to be a weatherman. I don't know what I'm doing, but I think he's
you do that a lot better than I did, man. I kind of botched that. But Jamie is going to be the best football player on Florida State this season. You saw how elite he was from the slot before Kevin Noles came in and took that role over. This is a guy who graded out as good as NFL top 40 picks last year. Wow. A guy like Jalen Petrie, very similar kind of role-wise. Jalen Petrie from Baylor played safety, played nickel corner, all these different spots. To me, the versatility that Jamie Robinson and Akeem Dent bring to Florida State, man, I think these guys are going to have a hell of a season. I think these are two really talented players. Obviously, Akeem Dent is a former 5-star guy, right? He was a corner coming out of high school. They convert him from corner to safety, go back and forth between positions a little bit. But when you finally allow him to be that safety next to Jamie Robinson, allow him to be that free safety, allow him to roam as much as we saw him roam in that back half of the season, Akeem was elite. And then we saw just how good he was in the spring too, Logan. This is a guy who got I think, probably more interceptions than anyone. Am I right about that, Logan? I think he got more interceptions.
Both in practices and by far in the scrimmages too. Yeah.
So, man, Akeem Dent, he has playmaker written all over him for me. This is a guy who he already, I think, on PFF's big board for the 2023 draft is a top 100 player. That's with pretty limited playing time. So that's just the level of talent Akeem Dent is. But I think once we see him, get to be in that role next to Jamie consistently, man, those two guys are going to be really, really fucking special. And I think Jamie, man, he's just the best football player on this team. I think Jared Verse is going to be really good. I think a lot of other guys are going to do great things, but no one can do what Jamie does. He can play every single position in the defensive backfield that you want him to play, right? You can put him in that nickel. If you're uncomfortable with your outside corners, move Kevin Knowles, Greedy Vance outside, stick Jamie in the slot. And then with teams in Florida State, especially, basing their defense so much out of nickel so often now with the 5 defensive backs, 2 outside corners, the 2 safeties, and then the nickel guy. Having Jamie on this team, I just don't know if there's anyone who's a more valuable player than he is for Florida State. And that's kind of why I keyed in on this position specifically, is because I think if you lose either one of those guys, it is like terrible. Like the drop off from going from those guys to the next guy on the depth chart, it's just too much to ask of those guys beneath them. But when you have Akeem and Jamie together playing, and Adam Fuller can move Jamie all over the field, trust Akeem Dent, and they can make plays like they have been making, especially in the spring and towards the end of the year. I think this is going to be a really special safety tandem for Florida State. I think they're going to be two guys we're going to be watching, on Sunday in the future. And not just undrafted 4th, 5th round guys. I think we're looking at 2 day 1, day 2 NFL players that are both going to be drafted in the first 3 rounds, in my opinion. So, yeah, man, I really just think these guys, they haven't even shown really what they can do in terms of the interceptions that I think they're going to have by the end of the season. And, I mean, Jamie had forced fumbles. He's all over the field. But those two guys are going to get – they're going to get after the ball, man.
Yeah, he can strip that ball. We saw that in his time last year with FSU. And the biggest thing, if those two, the tandem can stay healthy, that would be gigantic for Florida State this upcoming season. Because, like you said, Jamie was kind of limited to the beginning start of spring. But like Coach Mike Norvell said, after a couple of full-on practices for Jamie being plugged back in there, that defense just hits differently. And it plugs up a lot of holes, not only just in how he does in coverages, but how he plays in the run game. And that's something that Florida State loves to have. They like a guy that can go in and tackle. You lose Jarvis Brownlee, which was a nice factor to have in that run game defense. Jamie comes in and plays well last year, and I think a big season is ahead for him. And going over to Akeem Dent, I'm really stoked for him, because that's a guy that kind of had his ups and downs, a lot of inconsistencies. You look at his freshman year and almost could have came away with like 18 interceptions if he would have caught it. Seems like that's been progressed and developed to where he is bringing these down, not only in practices, which we got to saw, but these closed off spring scrimmages. We got to learn that, yeah, Akeem Dent was making plays and coming away with interceptions, Ben. He's just a guy that puts himself in the right position. That's what you expect from a veteran defensive back. And, like you said, these are guys that have NFL type of opportunities ahead of them. This is way down the road, but WalterFootball.com, we put out a piece about this a couple months ago, has projected Belichick. Belichick likes Akeem Dent. He likes playmakers there, definitely at the safety position. We know that. But projected to be a first-round pick at the number 14 overall. This is just ways and ways and ways ahead, but just kind of goes to show that some of these national outlets are keeping an eye on Akeem Dent. And we know we've got a lot of projections on what Jamie Robinson is going to have once ever he's, depends, after the season. You got two. If you're getting those kind of projections early on, you know that you feel pretty good heading into the season with guys that are playmakers. Safeties don't go early. They don't go second round, first round, unless they're there to come away with interceptions and put themselves in the right spot to make plays. This is a good sign for Florida State's defensive backfield.
Yeah, and Jamie, to me, is just he's just such a talented player. I mean, I talk about that versatility before, but for Adam Fuller, having that security blanket in a sense, right? That guy who you can move around, he can be your chess piece. He can be your queen on the chessboard. Put him wherever you want to put him, and he's gonna. I mean, his run fitting to me, man, he's elite in that. And honestly, I don't even really know if Jamie has a weakness in his game. I've been reviewing a lot of the stuff from last year, especially that 5-6 game stretch we saw where Jamie and Akeem were paired together for more snaps than they did, especially early on. So getting to see those two guys interact that way. And then also, I just think they're the leaders on the defense right now. They're both veterans. They're both kind of the older guys in that defensive back room who are teaching the young guys, right, who are bringing them along, who are the leaders in the room. So the communication we got to see between them on spring practice, to me, that was one of the more impressive things, too. We just saw that constant back and forth with Akeem and Jamie. And it just seems like the connection they have is natural. And it's a really important thing for this defense to have, because having your two safeties be on the same page, be able to read each other's minds, right? Being able to make those decisions on the fly. I just think it's going to pay off for these guys. And I really think this duo especially, man, they're going to get after the ball, and they're going to be getting a lot of turnovers from Florida State.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I'm excited for this group, and there's a lot to like. You got to have playmakers there in that deep defensive backfield and come away with interception. The Florida State got a lot better at that this last season, getting those takeaways, but making sure you seal away those takeovers. Make sure that when the ball is rolling around there, in the red zone, maybe you try to go grab the damn ball or just get on top of it. Get on top of the damn ball. Nightmare City here for some of the Florida State fans. They might go over here and not want to listen to this ever again, but Florida State has done a better job in that factor, and Jamie Robinson and Keem Dent will be your top guys, top-tier dudes on defense to do that.
Yeah, they will. And like I said earlier, Logan, these are two guys we're going to be seeing, added to that DBU, that collective of Florida State players we see in the NFL right now. So I think this is going to be a big year for both of these guys. And I love their personalities, too. I think, like I said, they're kind of the natural leaders of the defense, especially a guy like Jamie. So it's going to be really interesting to see how those guys, how everything plays out for those guys this year. I think they could even catapult themselves both into that first round range if everything goes the right way, if they have the right sort of season. And like you said, even then, there are a lot of great safeties taken in the second, third round of the NFL. If those guys are going to be at that sort of spot, they're both top 100 picks, that means that a lot of things went well for Florida State, right? Not just for those two players individually. So I think that's the key part of that. But
what I was going to mention real quick, what about behind those two? What about the behind? You had Sidney Williams, where it seemed like had a fantastic stride at the start of the year last year, and then health reasons kind of brought that back, and we got to see him compete during the spring. How do you feel about the rim behind that, just in case someone were to drop off there?
I think they have enough talent to figure it out there. In fact, I'm more interested by Sam McCall, honestly. Yeah, guys like Travis J, Sam McCall. I know Travis J, we saw him, he was a little bit hurt early on for Florida State too, right? But Sidney Williams, you mentioned him. I just think the drop-off from the starters to the backups in that room it's just tough when you have those guys who are so talented with Jamie and Akeem. And like we were talking about with the defensive line earlier, those defensive linemen, you're going to be bringing in waves. You're going to be too deep. You're going to be just throwing guys at these offensive lines. I think for Florida State, the defensive backfield, it's going to be different. Obviously, you talked about those safeties behind them, but I think even then, looking at the corner, looking at nickel corner, I'm going to be interested to see how all that plays out, Logan. That's the really interesting part to me. What happens if Kevin Knowles goes down, or if they lose one of their outside corners? Do they move Jamie back to nickel? Do they stick a Kevin Knowles outside? Do they stick Greedy Vance outside? I feel like they have a lot of these guys who can fill multiple different roles, and I'm not as much focused on the other safeties as I am, if they lose their base nickel corner, what the hell do they do? Because I think that's going to be really telling of how they feel about the rest of this defensive backfield and who gets those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's worth noting, too. We got to see Renardo Green be dropped down now to corner, so you kind of lose a more maybe veteran side. You still want to see some more play time from him and being fully healthy, but it's worth noting, you don't have Green back there now at the safety position. He's dropped down to corner, expected to be one of the starters, maybe most likely heading into the season opposite of Amarion Cooper. So worth something noting there on what they want to do, just in case, fingers crossed. A lot of this is going to be health for this team, but the upside is if you can stay healthy, this is a strong unit.
Yeah, no, health is going to be really key for Florida State across the board. I think they're not as deep as they need to be, but the top end talent of this team is good enough that they should be much better. They should be much improved. This record should be better for Florida State. And we saw, Logan, how many competitive games this team was in. So it's not like they're that far off from where they need to be. But, man, we're wrapping up an hour and a half. This is pretty crazy. Honestly, Logan and I were planning for an hour. We didn't even hit two of the topics that we were planning to talk about. But I hope everyone enjoyed watching this today. I believe during this stream, I passed 400 subscribers on the channel. So thanks to everyone who's watching. If you haven't subscribed already, it's free. Just go click the subscribe button beneath the video. If you're over on Twitter, on Tomahawk Nation Twitter, jump over to YouTube. You can just go to my @ on the actual Twitter stream. And then also, make sure you go check out Nole Gameday. Make sure you check out what Logan's doing. I believe you guys have an interview later tonight, Logan, right?
Yep, with 2013 national champion. I think Kenny's been on our show for quite a while, but I kind of want to dive in a little bit more into that during his time at Florida State, but definitely that 2013 team the year prior. Kenny's always a great interview, and he has a big camp coming up too. So definitely appreciate you, Ben, for having me on here. Hopefully to do a lot more of these. Like you said, you and I can talk about ball for a very, very, very long time. So we now know that maybe 2 or 3 topics are a max on here now a day.
Oh yeah, no. We need to make sure we slim things down a little bit more next time because we definitely we could just be on here for hours doing this. I really enjoyed doing this with Logan. Obviously, like you said, we're gonna be doing this again and throughout the summer. We're gonna be doing it during the season. We're gonna be talking ball a lot. So everyone, go check out the work at Tomahawk Nation. I'll be doing, and make sure you're going over to Nole Gameday. And reading all the covers that they're doing. I know both of us are planning, I believe, to be at that camp on Saturday, be involved in all the recruitment stuff we're going to be seeing over the next couple of weeks in Tallahassee. So make sure you follow both of us on Twitter. We'll be, I'm sure, posting a lot about that, giving a lot of updates, trying to get what information we can. And Florida State fans, if you enjoyed this, tune in next time and make sure you're on the lookout. We plan on going every Thursday, but for now in the summer, it's going to be a more loose schedule. So just keep an eye out for me on my Twitter. I'll be updating the schedule and all the streams there. But Logan, man, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. And like you said, we're going to have to do this again soon because we got a lot more to talk about in terms of Florida State football.
We will. We'll put a timer on next. I will make sure that we don't talk too much. We won't dive too much into anything. But yeah,
in between segments, we got to stop watching. We're like, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have someone tap us on our shoulder here and make us shut up. But yeah, appreciate it. Everybody hit that subscribe button. We'll be back here. We'll definitely be hanging out more to talk some Noles. There's a lot to discuss. This is a big time season ahead for Mike Norvell, like we talked about earlier. So lot to discuss. Big off season too. So we'll be here. Appreciate everybody listening.
All right, and peace out, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. You can be on the lookout for another one of my pieces beyond numbers. It's going to be about Keem Dent, Jamie Robinson. I was talking a lot about those guys because I've been watching a lot of those guys, and they are fucking impressive to me. So I hope everyone stays on the lookout for that. It'll be on my Twitter. It'll be on Tomahawk Nation. And yeah, this is going to be a really interesting time for Florida State. We're getting out of that dead period now. So thank you for everyone who watched, and we'll catch you next time.